Hello and welcome back to the channel. We are live here with Conor McKenna again, and we've had the All Ireland football semi-finals. They weren't particularly competitive, but we'll give them a run over anyway, and sort of talk about what we've seen, and maybe thoughts on what we might see in a couple of weeks' time whenever the Dubs and Mayo meet again. So on Saturday night, Dublin, I don't even know where did they get out of first gear. They kind of looked like it wasn't like the machinist sorts that we're used to, but it just looked like a real comfortable win. 124 to 12 points in the end. Um, like Cavan kept it tight for 15 minutes maybe, and then the Dubs just kind of moved up a wee bit and done what they do. So what did you make of the game?
It was very, very one-sided game, Gerry. I think Cavan did probably as well as you could expect. Really, to be honest, I think that there seemed to be an element of surprise by a lot of people with this result, and it wasn't really a surprise in how the game panned out. Like Dublin, I think they were expected to win by this margin, and they kind of got over the line, and it'll be in a final. But I do think, Gerry, that there's been a bit of an overreaction, to be honest with you. From this, like I just think that Dublin, like this year, they've had it easy enough so far. There's no point denying that. That kind of way. They've had it very straightforward, and I just think that there's a few teams. If you were going to draw up a list of teams that were going to beat Dublin this year, or had any sort of chance, like you'd be looking at the likes of Mayo, obviously Kerry, Donegal, and Tyrone as teams that would have any sort of prayer against Dublin. That kind of way. And I think, to be fair to Dublin, all those teams kind of got knocked out themselves by other teams. Like Kerry lost to Cork, and Donegal lost to Cavan, and Tyrone lost to Donegal, and like Monaghan will, like Mikey said, they probably wouldn't be expected but to beat Dublin and Galway. But I'd say you'd probably have a tier one with Dublin and probably a tier two, shall we say? Well, obviously not the tiers, but like we have Donegal, Tyrone, Mayo, and then you'd have a tier three where you might have Monaghan and Galway, just say maybe for argument's sake. But the four teams that I mentioned, Tyrone, Mayo, Donegal, and Kerry, three of them got knocked out. Mayo were still left, and this is the first real test that Dublin have had all year. Is going to be in the final. But just going back in the game Saturday, I thought they played. They didn't really have to get going, as you said. And Cavan did very well. They battled hard, but they just kind of ran out of steam in the end. And Dublin will be pleased enough to be another All Ireland final, I suppose. But going in against Mayo now, it'll be a different ball game, I'd imagine.
So the other game, obviously, then we expected things to be a bit tighter in this game, and to be honest with you, sort of in one aspect, I think Mayo might hit the heights a wee bit more than Dublin did. I just thought Dublin just sort of seemed to just canter along, whereas certainly in the first half, Mayo, just looked electric. Obviously, Tipperary didn't exactly do themselves very many favours as well. Gerry and Conor 4-9. That's quite the tally. So were you surprised it was as easy for Mayo?
I suppose it was. I thought Tipperary would have given them a wee bit more of a game, Gerry. To be honest with you, I thought Tip would have been certainly a lot closer than they were. But I think Mayo Killian O'Connor is such a good footballer. I think he doesn't really get anywhere near enough credit as he deserves, Killian O'Connor, because if you look at him, he's a remarkably consistent footballer, and he's been on the block for years now. And he's the all-time top scorer in championship football, like for any county. So he's really, and when he doesn't play for Mayo, they don't seem to play anywhere near as well. So he's a huge addition and a serious footballer. And like, I think that he's one of the best players in the country for definite. Like, he's really would be a good player in any age. And I think if the one player I'd maybe compare him to would be probably Wayne Rooney when he played for Man United. Like, he kind of was breaking all these records, scoring all these goals for England and Man United, and he never really probably got the real credit he deserved. Like, I suppose probably the difference is Rooney has his medals, and Killian O'Connor would probably say he doesn't have an All-Ireland. Well, he doesn't have an All-Ireland, so he probably craves that one elusive All-Ireland medal, and how we'd love to get it in 2 weeks' time. But Mayo, the second half Tip probably created a few goal chances. But I think, Gerry, the reality is at halftime, realistically, James Horan and Mayo knew they were in the All-Ireland final, so I wouldn't read anything into the second half. I think that they'll definitely give Dublin the game. Do think they win? They probably won't win the game, but I think they'll be close. And I do think that Mayo have made a lot of progress this year. I think that this year could be split into two halves for Mayo. The first half of the year was very, very disappointing. It ended up having seen them lose a few games, and that actually saw them relegated to Division 2. And I suppose since the lockdown, they bet Galway. They lost to Tyrone early. In the Tyrone match, they kind of set up for the championship. They kind of set up how they were going to play in the championship. They didn't really play. They didn't set up for the match against Tyrone, and then the next match they bet Leitrim, they bet Roscommon, they bet Galway, and they're after beating Tip now. So they've come through all the phases. They took in every game as they come, kind of jumped all the hurdles now and they're into the last one in the final. But I do think that the league, it's important for Mayo to get back to Division 1, definitely. But having said that, I'd say if you offered Mickey Hart to trade with James Horan's position now, where they be in the All-Ireland final, I'd say he'd rather be in Division 2 next year and be preparing for an All-Ireland final in 2 weeks' time. And just if you look at the two teams that exited the championship, Gerry, Tipperary and Cavan, they both had fairy tale years, I suppose, in some sense. And I'm actually starting to slightly change my opinion about the knockout championship, though, Gerry. To be honest, I just don't know if it's the way to go long term. Like, I just think that it is great. It's great for the underdogs and everything, but like probably least a few damn squids like we saw in semi-finals. Like, I think people were kind of complaining about the qualifiers that it was maybe too easy for the top teams. They were always end up in semi-finals, but the only thing is, at least then we always had those brilliant weekends, kind of, like. And I think now, while it was great for the stories, we got a few great years out, but I just think that, like, even from a revenue point of view, from the GAA's perspective, like, the crowds wouldn't have been massive at those games at the weekend either. Like, and the qualifiers do bring good games. So I don't know. I kind of think, Gerry, that I would always be a big preacher for the straight knockout, and when it was probably not the way to go, that kind of way. And I just think this is the first straight knockout championship we've seen, and has it been a success? It probably has, because we've seen shocks, we've seen teams win it, but has it been a brilliant championship? It probably hasn't, Gerry, to be all honest with you. Like, the Leinster Championship was a non-event, like the Ulster Championship was very, very good, I suppose, in hindsight. The Munster Championship was very good, and Connacht wasn't bad. It was okay. We had one good game in the final. So, yeah, I don't know about the knockout, whether it's the way to go long term. I think if you look at it, Gerry, last year's championship and this year's championship, we probably had a better championship last year, like when it wasn't knockout. So while I would be a preacher for knockout, I just don't think this year it's really worked, to be honest with you.
One of the things I did see, just as I was talking about Gerry and Conor, obviously, Twitter, it can be crazy, it can be funny at times, and one of the tweets I did see was, I think it was a Dublin, and they says that Gerry and Conor is the best Gaelic footballer ever not to win an All Ireland. So, or like, I think the way they wrote it was like, he will be remembered as the best Gaelic footballer not to ever win an All Ireland. So they've decided that that there's not going to be much of a contest in 2 weeks. I think in this week's games, I know obviously they were disappointing. There wasn't much of a contest, but I think both Cavan and Tipperary, they had won their championship final. Like, it was winning the Ulster and Munster championships was their cup final. And it felt a bit like the race was run at the time. So if you're weighing up the final, are we going, like, is it going to be another blowout, or can Mayo stick it up to the Dubs and at least, like, maybe give us a contest into the second half or something like?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a relatively good game, Gerry. I think that Mayo are, without question, a step up from what Dublin have faced so far in their 4 games. I think Dublin haven't really got a glove laid on them at all so far, and I just think that Mayo, like, if you look at last year, okay, the final score lost by 10 points, but Mayo were 2 points up at half time and probably should have been more ahead. In the second half, the kick-out didn't really work. The 5 minutes, Dublin kind of put the game to bed. They were kind of very ruthless in those 5 minutes. But even before those years, Mayo and Dublin was always very close. Now, I think Dublin probably will win the game, but I'd be surprised if Mayo don't make it very, very tough for them. And I'd be surprised if Mayo aren't relatively close to winning this game, Gerry, to be honest. I think Mayo are a lot better than people think. As I think I said in the show last week, they've been remarkably consistent in the last few years. I suppose one hallmark of Mayo is we're 18 years in Division 1 before this year, maybe a wee bit more. And also, like, in the last year, they've been very, very hard to beat when push comes to shove, kind of, But I do think if we had qualifiers this year, like, I suppose there is an awful lot of debate about Dublin's dominance at the moment, and I completely buy into it. There's definitely a debate probably needed on that. But I do think, Gerry, in normal years, we would have seen Kerry come strong through the qualifiers after learning from their mistakes, and we may have seen another team, whether it's Donegal or Tyrone or one of those teams, come through the qualifiers, and then suddenly you have quite a meaningful championship. Like, and just one more point I'll make before we kind of move on to this is that people are going on about how there's only 3 lads left since 2011, and so that shows they built a new team, and probably that is correct, fair enough. But, like, if you look at that Kilkenny hurling team that played for 9 years, they won the first All-Ireland in 2006, right? They won the last in 2015, the last of them. From that 9 years, I was looking at the start in 15, there was only one player who played in 2006 and 2015 in the start 9. So they had a brand new team as well, even though people would probably say it was the one great Kilkenny team, So that's nothing too different. I just think, Gerry, that there's a bit of an overreaction to one weekend this year that people kind of think Dublin are miles ahead. I suppose the fact that they've beaten the Ulster champions without breaking stride, maybe that's it. But I do think that these things should be looked at in the bigger picture. Now, having that, they probably will win 6 in a row, and there's no reason why that can't be extended. But I just do think people shouldn't overreact so much based on a few series of maybe non-expected results.
But I think certainly, they haven't really come up against anybody who, was probably expected to come within 10 points of them. Mayo might be expected to be a bit closer. But it just, like, to me, it just feels like I was excited for the Mayo and Tipperary game, whereas Dublin and Cavan, like, I don't know, I wasn't, and sometimes I think, like, great teams, and, like, obviously, like, they've done things that nobody else has done, but sometimes, people will remember, like, like, whenever they, like, teams overcame adversity and they come back, or they had a real great rivalry. But it just seems like this, like, Dublin are just playing a game of their own, and, like, I personally, I completely disagree with the whole funding issue. I know it's not something that you find an interesting debate as such, but, like, to me, it's a disgrace, and it makes it a joke, to be honest. But it's something that, to me, like, it does need to be looked at. Like, I genuinely, like, the All Ireland final, and it just kind of feels like Mayo have a chance if absolutely everything goes right for them. Like, if they turn up and 15 men play the best game that they've ever played, and the Dubs are a wee bit under par, and even then, is it going to be enough? I don't know. It's just, to be honest with you, like this, like, there has been a lot of times this year. Don't get me wrong. There's been a lot of times this year where there's been some great football matches. Like the Gerry and Conor game was one of the things. Like, it was a shit, excuse my language, but it was a crap match, and but the end, made it. Like, it was literally a game that nobody would ever remember. But the last, like, 30 seconds or whatever it was of it has it where people will be talking about it in 25 years' time. Tipperary winning the Munster Championship after 85 years on the 100th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. It was a great story. But, like, I just like, to me, I just don't, like, there's nothing, like, I'm not remotely excited about watching Dublin just cruise down All Ireland. Like, it's not, it's like Formula One. Again, it's like, am I going to sit down? Like, I'm not a big Formula One fan anyway, but, like, there doesn't seem to be any competition for Mercedes and Formula One and Lewis Hamilton. And like, Lewis Hamilton gets COVID, and some guy comes in that's never drove the car before, is fastest in 2 practices, probably would have won the race if they hadn't made a mistake. It's not interesting. Sport to me is like 2 people going head to head, competitive. That's what I want to see, but I'm just not remotely interested in watching the Dubs just destroying everyone. And it's no disrespect to the Dubs, because they get the players on the field, they work hard, they do what they do, and they've built a machine, and they're 2 or 3 deep in every position. But to me, it's not fun.
I think, Gerry, though, I'd say it probably repeats this Dublin debate is going to kick in. I do think it's definitely true. I think Dublin was a bit of a disgrace if you look at the figures. I'm not really, to be honest with you, I wouldn't have a whole heap of facts adverse at the moment, to be honest. So I don't want to be kind of sprouting misinformation. John Connellan from Westmeath put it a very, very good letter there, and I would agree with that. I do think the funding was disproportionate, and I do think it was unfair. But what I was just trying to say, I don't enjoy talking about this or championship structures, because I think it gets talked down to the absolute hills, and everyone talk. And I just think that there's people who are looking after these things, and on committee, look, it is worthy of a debate. But I don't know, am I the best person to be talking about? Which, I wouldn't be an overly expert in those topics. But just going back at there, I just think that one more thing that's probably interesting as well is that if you were looking at 100 years ago, and maybe whatever these things were decided upon with counties, like, would you really have a county with 1.3 million people against a team with 28,000, which is Dublin against Leitrim? You probably wouldn't, and the provincial structure is probably a bit outdated as well. So that's probably what my take on those 2 things would be. I think that there needs to be a bit of a revamp of the whole competition, because I was listening to the Sunday game last night, and Pat Gilroy, I wouldn't probably agree with everything he said, but he made a good point. Like, what they say, by 2050s, that 95% of the world is going to be living in cities. Like, so this thing about the urbanization is definitely going to be an issue, and Dublin are probably just going to continue to grow stronger and stronger. And I think that there's been a bit of a monster created with Dublin, and monster is probably not the right term to use, because that would indicate something bad. I think the Dublin team are very, very good, and it's probably good that the game is in the city, but I think it's probably got to the stage where Dublin are just way, way too strong for most other counties, because they've really got their act in order, and they really, really seem to be functioning well at the moment as a county, and there's no sign of them going away, Gerry. I don't think there's probably not going to be a case of Dublin just kind of falling back into the pack in Leinster and making an open competition. So, look, I don't know what the right or wrong answer is. That's probably why I don't like discussing these things, to be honest with you, that kind of way. But it is definitely an issue for sure. And I suppose Dublin, what I was just trying to make the point of, I just don't think Dublin are that far ahead. I just think they are unbelievable, miles ahead of most counties. But I think I do genuinely think there are a few counties who can compete with them. And I suppose it's a pity that maybe apart from Mayo, we're not going to see those counties in this year's championship.
Yeah. To be honest, like, for me, there's advantages, and there's certain advantages. The fact that Dublin has the population that it has, brutally honest, I have got absolutely no problem with that. That's how many people live in Dublin. Fair enough. I'm completely for that. That's fine, because do you know what? The people that live in Dublin, there's going to be a massive number of them that have got all their interests. There's going to be more things to take away. Like look at the League of Ireland. There must be like 5 or 6 top clubs in Dublin. Do you know what I mean? And then you're going to be a bit further out of Dublin, and you've a couple then, in Louth and you and down in the Wicklow with like Bray and stuff, and the greater Dublin area. But like, it's the fact that the numbers that were on the Sunday game last night showed that there's just under 40,000 active players in Dublin, and there's over 33,000 active players in Cork. So the Cork's close to Dublin in terms of active players, despite the population being a lot more in Dublin. But the fact is, the amount of money that Dublin are getting, €274.70 per player. Cork are getting €15.90 per player. That is absolutely hideous and ridiculous, and it's a massive fault. Things like that annoy me. That does annoy me. The fact that Dublin have got more people, fair enough. I'm fine with that. That's what is in Dublin County. I don't like this idea of splitting Dublin. I'm not for it. I'm not like the split. That is Dublin. That's who is in Dublin. But the fact is that they've got that advantage. I don't even necessarily have a problem with the fact that, because Dublin's the capital city of Ireland, sponsorship, there's going to be more opportunities for sponsorship for Dublin. So I don't have a problem with that. That's they're going to go in. There's rich people in other counties that are pumping loads of money in. So I don't have a problem with that. But genuinely, the money that's coming directly from the GAA is not right, in my opinion. But it's a debate that's going to go on for a long time, and it's I don't know what they're going to do about it. Obviously in Cork, I think there's probably Cork is probably as many players, but I would imagine that's a lot more split in terms of dual. There's probably a lot more, 33,000. There might even be more hurling players than football players in Cork. But I don't know. It's a debate for another time. But until that's addressed, it's something to me that it just doesn't feel right, and I don't think that you're really going to get a competitive balance until it is addressed. But obviously, we've got this game to look forward to in a couple of weeks. Dublin and Mayo, and I don't really care whether Dublin or Mayo wins it. I'm not from either of the counties, but I genuinely just want a good game. It's like I've watched every Dublin game this year for a while, and I don't I haven't seen any of them through because I've got bored. But it's not. At the end of the day, if you're a dub, imagine being a dub. It's going to they're going to, whenever they finally lose a game, it's going to be like imagine what Celtic are doing with Neil Lennon, and they're going to be chasing buses around car parks and all sorts. You breed success, and the higher you get, the harder the fall's going to be. But I just don't see that fall coming for a few years yet, to be honest.
No, I think it's definitely a debate we have, and I think all the points people are making there are very, very valid. When you look into funding on the sheet, it does definitely look very, very disproportionate, to be honest. And one more thing, Gerry, I think that there's also areas in Dublin that have not been exploited. Well, I won't say exploited, but have not been, maybe they're not really as strong as they should be. Maybe like Tala, Swords, those areas that they're big, huge parts of Dublin where there's probably not as much of a presence as there should be. And it's probably the same in hurling. Like, so I suppose if we see the result of this money coming in, I suppose with more participation in schools, everything, like we could see Dublin suddenly getting much, much more stronger. Like, that's why I think that there's maybe a bit of an issue with the population size, Gerry, to be honest. I just think that, like, if you have that many players, look, it's hard to know. I mean, we kind of said I wasn't going to get into it, and it's been talking about for the last 10-15 minutes, but look, it's the way it is. I do think, as you said, though, look, splitting Dublin in two would not be the same by any means, but like having Dublin South or Dublin North, I think what you could see the GAA, and it's probably completely against the ethos, is probably players from different counties representing, like players from maybe Dublin representing Westmeath or representing Louth or representing Wexford or whatever. I think that would be something I'd be more open to. I think that would probably be a way where you could keep it maybe a support base. And I do think I'd much rather see, I'm not a big NFL fan, but you could see maybe a draft system maybe go where players get picks underage and maybe utilise that or something. But look, I suppose, again, that's for another day, that. But I do think you're right, though. I don't think Dublin South or Dublin North in the current structure would do the same. But I think in the current structure, it's probably not really realistic. I think the population of Dublin in the future is going to be 2 million people, and the smaller counties, the population is going to probably be less. So I don't think that's probably realistic either to have that maybe difference in population playing on the field. But I think one more point is if the GAA has gone as strong in Dublin and maybe they had areas in that county, I don't see why they couldn't do it in other counties. I suppose maybe they're starting to see a bit of scale fast, but Antrim, your own county, for example, where there's probably huge parts of Antrim where the GAA is probably distant, like,
I was looking kind of into like populations and counties, and I think Antrim is like the second most populated county in Ireland. So it's something like 600,000 people or something, But like, again, straight away, at least 50% of them have never watched or seen GAA in their life, and then whenever you're going into it, there's probably, like, in certain areas it's really strong. Certain areas in Belfast, GAA is really strong, and then like in my part of Antrim, you've kind of got like the rural areas where, like, I'm from North Antrim and like up the sort of Glens, and it's all hurling, and there's no football played. And then you go over sort of to the West Antrim, like places like Toom and out that direction, Randallstown, all that there, like they are very much more football areas, So it's hard. Like looking at Antrim, like there's nothing I would love more than to be seeing Antrim competitive, like literally competitive would be good. Like we've had in the hurling, we've had a great year this year, and they've actually, like, the county board have really got, put a lot into. They've produced like a yearbook to celebrate, like how well they've done. Obviously, we've got one more game to go, which we'll talk about later in the week. But there's definitely counties there where the will's there, But I'm not, as I say, I'm not up for this. At the end of the day, like if you're from Dublin and you're playing for Dublin, like there's obviously more competition to get into the Dublin team, but like you're not going to want to go and wear someone else's jersey. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't be a fan of this sort of like franchising out players and drafting out players. Like, I think part of the ethos of the GAA is that it's your community and it's who you're like the tightness, and it just kind of, I don't know, it just kind of feels like if you want some sort of success and you're not from Dublin, you may try and get it in your club, because you're not going to be getting it elsewhere. But at the same time, I'm not really a fan of going down the route of all the different tiers. Like, obviously, that you could win the intermediate All Irelands and junior All Irelands or whatever, but I'm not a massive fan of it. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. I've no doubt that the GAA will come up with some plan that probably won't work, and they'll change it 2 or 3 times between now and then. But we'll see.
I think this reinforces the point why I don't like talking about these structures and Dublin funding. We've been talking about this for the last 50 minutes. We still have no solution, and the solution is always up with something. That's why I just think these debates always go around in circles, and it's the same thing being said all the time. That kind of way. I just don't think that it's the most enjoyable thing in the world, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, that's it. It is. We're all able to see the problems, but we're what 100 and odd years in, and we haven't got the solutions. Like, so I don't know. So it's maybe one day, Antrim will do the double and Sam and Liam, but probably not. But we'll let that do. Obviously, there was only 2 matches, and they weren't particularly exciting. But at least I got to have a bit of a rant there anyway. So I'm happy with myself. But we'll be back later in the week to preview the hurling, where obviously the only match anybody cares about is Antrim and Kerry. So we'll maybe touch on Waterford and Limerick, but it's all about the Joe McDonagh. My thanks as always to Conor for coming on and providing a set of eardrums for me to run at. So thanks, Conor, and as I say, we'll be back later in the week, and we'll preview the hurling. So until then, thanks for watching.